Okay.
All right, now I'm going to ask Marcus if he would like to introduce Katie to us.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll say just a little bit, I think a lot of us know this already, but just a little bit on the background of we went to Crawford Homes a couple months ago and had some conversations with people there. And some of us felt we had differing levels of comfort in terms of communicating with people there. And we were talking at a social justice team meeting about, hey, we should have a conversation about conversations, about how do we reach across socioeconomic class or just like different experiences, different backgrounds. And I said, oh, I had a lot of this training when I was involved with Thriving Connections. It was called Circles at the time, run through South Central Community Action Program, or SCAP. And so I reached out to Linda Patton and Katie Hopkins, who's with us here tonight, because they were Linda was one of the ones who taught me. And Katie was Thriving Connections, partners people in poverty with people in loosely, let's say, the middle class, using terms roughly here. To help someone who is experiencing poverty transition out of poverty, ideally. And so they're partnered, and it's their goals, and kind of there's a lot of conversation about, hey, you're not there to step on someone's toes, although it will happen. We're going to have these mistakes that come up where we say the wrong thing because we're kind of coming from different backgrounds. So they have lots of language about that, lots of training about just understanding where someone's coming from. I won't steal. I have lots of examples in my head, but I will let Katie go through these examples. And so I was like, oh, could be really helpful. Like Thriving Connections this is what they deal with on a daily, weekly basis of like, how do we get people together across different lines? And knowing Katie and knowing Linda, they're also just wonderful human beings. I will say that I will put Katie on the spot a little bit because she was someone who went through as both a leader and then later is now someone working. So someone who made the transition and understands a lot of different worlds and a lot of different communities within Bloomington. And is also she's super smart and super sweet. So it's this is a perfect person to have talk. And it's I think I said the other day when I saw you, Katie, you're like a shining example of someone in Thriving Connections, a superhero or a superstar in Thriving Connections. So whatever you want to say, but you're the person here to talk with us today. So that's my warm welcome for Katie Hopkins, superstar extraordinaire from Bloomington, Indiana.
Oh, thanks, Marcus. That's super generous. Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me to come and speak, and it feels this is first time I've really kind of talked to a group about, communication and that sort of thing. But you're right, this is kind of the bread and butter of Thriving Connections. And so if I'm going to pull up some slides because I have to have slides to keep my brain organized. And I'm going to share with you all. Let's hide this. Because I'm not sure how familiar you all are with Thriving Connections and with South Central Community Action Program, which is our lead agency. We are in an agency that also houses Head Start. We provide the energy assistance every year, weatherization, and housing choice vouchers. And we have a program called Growing Opportunities that works with nutrition and urban gardening. And so we are one of, the many programs that SCAP has to kind of address different aspects of poverty within Monroe County, Owen County, and Brown County. And I have a little video that we did a few years ago that gives a quick intro. And I think this will be helpful to you guys to be able to see what we look like. And get a better feel for what it means to be in Thriving Connections.
Doing a thing. I'm doing a thing. Yeah, I can come out whenever I want, but you can't come in. That happens constantly.
Every week, a group of people from all walks of life meet for dinner and conversation. This is Thriving Connections. Thriving Connections is an intentional relationship program where those dealing with poverty are matched with volunteers to build friendships and a community to support them in their lives.
I'm a social worker and I'm aware of a lot of different agencies in the community. So I heard of it and I was intrigued. We are supporting folks who are experiencing poverty and just helping people achieve their goals and what it is that they want to do for themselves.
Metaphor one way is sailing on a boat, life's journey. And I captain my own crew, and my crew members are people who help me in my crew. As a captain, I go, I want a license, is what I did. And then went, okay, let's find out how to get your permit. You get your permit first, then you figure out how many hours you gotta drive. And then from there, you're gonna do the tests, and then from there, we get everything done. So I just got my license, and I'm like, yes, you can drive now. I'm like, now I need a car. And they're like, oh, okay.
I just feel like folks need to be treated with dignity and respect and not be looked down on or judged for struggling financially, because this can happen to anybody.
You can come here and you can just have a nice day. You have free dinner, programming, no judgment. Have some chat and go home and just 2 hours of just no worries.
And great food. So the food, I think, should never be undervalued. I think anytime we can build childcare and food into activities, I think that's just very nurturing for everybody. The fact that these folks want to come every week and maintain these relationships, and I just think we all owe it to everybody, to each other, to look out for each other.
I have friends I will never forget thanks to Thriving Connections. It means a lot because those people take the time out of their time to help our cause, because it affects what I can do for the rest of my life. It's valuable because I went from being someone with my issues, having the plausibility of being kicked out of school and in jail, to now I'm a high school graduate. And all these things that I have the chance to do, I now not only have the chance to do, but I have the confidence and I know I can get them done one way or another.
So that's kind of what a Thursday night with Thriving Connections looks like. We always have food and conversation.
Now,
And we are based on routines, rituals, and relationships. So that's kind of the crux of what we are building in for the community. One of our routines, which you all kind of did a little bit of as you were, waiting for people to come into the room, we call them new and goods. When as Bree asked if anybody had anything wonderful happen to them today, that's the kind of thing that we do. It's an equalizer. And we start every meeting that we have every Thursday. And we've done this for 13, 14 years. Every meeting starts with new and goods. And we do that because we want for everyone to be sharing something that's personal. We won't start a meeting the way that a lot of our meetings in our work world go, where we, state our name and our title and identify ourselves by some of these identities that set us apart. Instead, we want to talk about what's going on in our personal life. We all have family. We all have things that are, going on in the community. Maybe we're going to the same festivals and the same activities. And it's a way for us to kind of deepen those relationships and see each other as people first and not in the roles that we play. The reason that we do it, we love our routines because routines are safe and predictable and reliable. People feel safe in them if they know that every Thursday, that's how the meeting's going to start. They help us connect person to person, and that's the most important part of it. We also have group guidelines, which are set by our community. So they are meant to be something that makes people feel safe. And every group that comes through Thriving Connections and graduates and becomes a part of the bigger group helps to craft the group guidelines for people. Now, I think I want to learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing at Crawford, because it may or may not make sense to have this for Crawford, but understanding that these are some of the things that people have come up with and see as signs of respect and safety might help you guys. So we have always asked for people to silence our cell phones and to be present. When we train our volunteers, we make sure to tell our IU students and everybody that comes in the same thing. We prefer for people to be present and to be there for the hour that they're there, and to at least look like, you know, you're interested and curious and want to be engaged. We presume good intentions. So, you know, there are always going to be mistakes that are made, and that's how we navigate them together. But we come at it presuming that we are all there for the same cause, and that we are all there with good intentions. We have our little mechanisms for navigating those conflicts. We call it our ouch, oops, oh. And everybody has, you know, every group has their own little jargon, and it's important that language belong to your community. This is what we came up with somewhere along the way, and it has worked for us. And that's just a way for us to say, you know, if somebody has a conflict, maybe they don't like the word conflict, or maybe it feels like an argument. Maybe it feels really like high tense, but if they can just say it's an ouch, I have an ouch with someone. Or if somebody says something during the meeting, they can just say ouch, and that person will acknowledge it and say oops, and then later on they'll talk it out and they'll have a reflection. That's the O part. One of the biggest areas where they have asked is no unsolicited advice. We all have things that we're working on, and I think you all have things that you're working on, goals and places in your life that you want to grow and learn. But we oftentimes get a lot of advice in all of the programs and the assistance and places that we go to. A lot of different people have suggestions or want to tell us what we need to do to get out of poverty. And honestly, you know, it feels a little overwhelming sometimes. And sometimes the hidden message behind that is that I don't think you know how to do it, so I'm going to tell you how to do it. And people in poverty are the most interested in getting themselves out. So if it was as easy as following a piece of advice, we would have done it by now. It's often way more complicated. And so we just start out with a general no unsolicited advice, listening and just being there to say, yeah, man, that's really hard. Or that stinks. Or just to say, you know, I believe you, like you're sharing your experience with me, and I'm not going to question that. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to, you know, yes, absolutely. Not present judgment and be a safe place for you to talk. We do step up, step back. So for those of you who are big talkers, those would be the people that we challenge to step back a little bit and to listen more. And for those who aren't and seem to be, you know, more shy, we challenge our shy people and the people who are a little more self-conscious to step up, because we absolutely want to hear what everyone has to say. No judgment. That's a big one. There are a lot of things we all come into with our own biases. But at least while we're in our Thursday meetings, we're not going to express, oops, dog, judgment. Body language is one that people have asked, you know, for the hour that we're there during the meeting, to be mindful. And that just means, you know, try to control. I'm really bad about this, and I make mistakes and I get ouched because I'm an eye roller, you know, and it may or may not even be in response to something that somebody has said. But, you know, body language can be interpreted. And so we just ask everybody that while we're there to try and be mindful. We do these, and we have the group guidelines, again, for helping our group to feel safe. We know that learning anything new, whether it be relationships or whether it be mathematics or whether it be, you know, a new language, which you guys are kind of, I associate it with that. I speak a second language, and coming into Thriving Connections felt like I was learning another language. It's going to feel awkward. And that's where the growth happens, in the awkwardness. So I would like to know a little bit more about what you all are doing at Crawford, and what's the history behind that? What do you enjoy about it? What are you hoping to do more of? That would help me kind of know what sorts of things to get into.
I can say a little bit. So we went to Crawford Homes for the first time maybe 2 months ago during the summer to serve a meal and to have a game night. This was suggested to us by Forrest Beacon from Forrest Beacon. Forrest Beacon.
Yeah, Forrest Beacon, absolutely. We all know Forrest Beacon.
This was recommended to us by him at a kindness training that we did with him, which was maybe a little similar to this conversational training. So we went there for the first time, and then we've changed some things with our new plan. We're going to focus less on games and more on just food and conversation and making connections, and not at all to evangelize, really just to form connections personally with each person there at Crawford. So I would say that's our goal. Yeah.
Cool. And how often are you going?
So this is our second time going. So the first time that we went was about 2 months ago. And then I think we're thinking kind of like once a quarter, something like that. Don't have a exact time frame as to how frequently exactly, but a few times a year is our plan.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds, and so it's like is it an area where you all will be like sitting together to eat, or yeah?
Yes, exactly. Yep. We'll all try to sit together. Now we're expecting somewhere like 40 or 50 people. So clearly not all at the same table, but hoping that we'll have a mix of, church people and people from Crawford at each table so that we're getting to know one another.
Okay. Well, that sounds actually a lot kind of like a Thursday night meeting, Marcus. Right. So we had, we're slowly getting our volunteer infrastructure back post-pandemic, but pre-pandemic, we were meeting every Thursday night at St. Mark's on the east side, and would have volunteer groups coming and doing the meal for us. And then we loved it when our volunteers would come and sit down with us to actually take part in the meal. But these things actually might be helpful to you guys if you're building out, what the sort of agenda for, or the structure of the meal might look like. When they would come and sit down, we would all do the new and goods together. And then usually it was just kind of catching up with each other. I felt like our volunteers, they did a lot of listening because the people sitting at the tables were probably catching up with each other. Sometimes they'd ask questions about, oh, I haven't heard of that place before. Where is that? What's that look like? Or, just kind of contributing, but in sort of a holistic, kind of just natural, organic way. Sometimes we would have topics that we were going to be talking about that night. And so if the volunteers wanted to, ask about what we were going to be doing, or why did we choose this topic, what's the relevance, that would kind of be a way. And then, yeah, I mean, our volunteers typically at the end of the meal, they would leave and go clean up, and then they'd be gone. But if you guys, the meal is the crux of it, then you'll be together for that time. I think doing things together, even, we used to try and find roles for people who were attending to also be helping kind of set up the dinner, or, just naturally kind of interacting, helping to clean up. And we require that because we require reciprocity for all of our participants. But what that reciprocity looks like is very much determined by the individual. But yeah, we would have some people who liked helping to clean up, and then they'd get to talk and just naturally mingle. Game nights like you had are really great because having some kind of an activity to build the conversation around and kind of let it flow is really, really helpful. But yeah, I mean, you guys went once, I would say that that's absolutely normal to feel awkward and to feel, because you're meeting brand new people, and that's going to be awkward no matter what. You're meeting people that you want to be sensitive to, and so you're concerned and you're a little anxious. Those are good things. The relationships, if you guys are going consistently, if you're going to be there once a quarter, those are going to start to grow, just very naturally, because you'll see some of the same faces. And I know for our meal volunteers, like, we started to recognize some of the people who were there, and would look forward to it. And they might remember something from 3 months ago that we said, and ask us, hey, how did it go with, your kid and that activity that they were going to sign up to do? And it's like, holy cow, you remembered? Like, that just feels really nice, to just become a part of the fabric of their community. And that happens through consistency. It's just a natural kind of organic part of that.
So as we're building up that consistency, what would you say is a good way to help them to remember us? As you said, I mean, once a quarter, it's not as frequent as once a week, and getting to know those people on a frequent basis. So what would you recommend as we're just building up that momentum?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you wanted to try out something like, a little bit of structure where you have the dinner and then you're sitting down and you're all going to, whatever it looks like. We used to have like a moment of silence before we ate, and it was just a way to give thanks. It was not a denominational thing. It was just, we're going to take a moment of silence to give thanks in whatever way we feel called to do so. And then after that, we would ask people to do new and goods at their table. So it was just like those little prompts, to help give just enough structure to like get the conversations going, and to start them off on that level of like a personal thing. And oftentimes, like, the new and goods will lead into other kinds of stuff. If you hear somebody's new and good and you learn something about them, ask them questions about it. It'll just kind of get going a little bit. And then if you have, depending on how long you guys are there, if you have time to do some kind of topic or some kind of driving question or something, that you want to talk about, you can do that. Appreciations are what I'll show you what we do at the end. But we have a starting and a stopping routine that just is something super predictable. We always do it. We start and stop on something that's good vibes all around, good feelings, getting, people feeling good and comfortable around each other. And are also good habits for everyone to get into, regardless of what your life situation looks like.
I have another question. I don't know if we're actually at the question and answer mode.
No, please, question and answer, because that helps me.
So, what would you say are some conversation topics maybe to avoid or maybe to focus on with people who are experiencing poverty? Clearly, finances is not something that we would want to be giving any unsolicited advice about. Like you said, I think that's really great solicited advice. Thank you very much. So what would you recommend for some other things to talk about or not to talk about?
Okay, so to talk about, I think, if you're interested in just getting to know a person better, I think those are always great topics. Just talk about, where'd you grow up? What what was school like? Or what are, and you guys can kind of share. I have, and I can share it with you if you want, but on nights when like I have a speaker drop out on me, I have like a little spinny wheel that I use that has questions on it. And so we'll just spin the wheel and see what question it lands on. And then we all talk about who our favorite teacher was, or what our favorite place, which park is our favorite park in Bloomington. And those will just bring up, memories and conversations and things that, hopefully everybody kind of has. They're just, very general, like get to know you questions. I
Yeah.
think as you develop the relationship, if there are topics where, you know, you want to move more into the social justice
Mhm,
aspect, if it's coming up from them
mhm,
and they're saying, you know, yeah, I want to, you know, I want to know how to do something about this,
mhm.
or that's where we build out. So within Thriving Connections, when we have, you know, people saying, we want to do something about this, we form a group and we do it. It's just like that, but it's not anybody saying, hey, we want you to do this, or, you know, our agency saying, hey, this is in the news, you guys should do this.
Mhm,
Nothing happens unless they tell us that that's what they want to do.
mhm.
So when George Floyd was murdered, we had some captains who saw a Facebook post from another captain, and they were shocked to see like an all lives matter. Like they were like, wait, what? And they said, how, you know, we haven't talked about this. We should talk about this as a community.
Mhm.
And it felt really hard. But we're like, yeah, so what do we do? And they drove it. They said, we want, you know, to get somebody who's knowledgeable about this to come and help us like have conversations. We went to a conference together. They wanted a book club. So now we have a book club and they read a book every month and have conversations about it. But that all came from just, you know, naturally, holistically hearing what people wanted to do.
Mhm. That's great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. As far as like topics that are no-nos, I don't have any. I mean, when we're presuming good intentions, people should, you know, again, if you have the group guidelines, it might be nice if you guys had, you know, something like that, but people will let you know, but trying to think. I know the first time that my allies invited me to like their house with their friends, the thing that felt super uncomfortable was hearing everybody talk about their vacations.
Mm.
Because we don't really do that. And hearing about like, you know, that you're struggling with deciding on, you know, whether or not to go to France or Germany this summer feels really unrelatable and uncomfortable, and just, it's not that like we have any resentment, it's just I can't relate to it and I don't know how to participate in that conversation.
That's
Things like,
very good advice. Yeah.
yeah, things that are kind of, you know, require money to participate in them.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's interesting hearing you talk about these examples, Katie, or in general, like the group guidelines, because it is, like you said, it's the Crawford experience is similar to a Thursday night at Thriving Connections. But some of the differences are the structuredness and the sort of like agreement, like
Yeah.
there's some similarities. Like I was going to say, it's different that people come at different times. Well, that happens at Thriving Connections too, and like people just kind of or whatever kind of wander, and it happens at church. I mean, it's like that'll happen, and you kind of get people involved as they come in. But more the kind of like, are we all on the same page?
Right.
At Thriving Connections, you tell people we're on the same page, and now let's come up with the guidelines. At Crawford, it feels like we're not as organized that way, and it may not,
Right.
it's not necessarily the purpose of that. And so that's just a little bit different of like I was thinking when you mentioned the ouch, oops, oh rule, like
Right. Like you guys aren't going to use that probably.
right. Well, I love that idea of like, oh, I just want I want a neutral way to say, oh, I was hurt, or to have someone else say that to me of like, oh, this is not personal. I know you probably didn't mean it, but like, hey, something you just said hurt, and let's talk about it. But like, so it's good to have that kind of concept, but we're not going to like have, at least right now, not have the framework in place to like, oh, this is an
Right.
example now, as opposed to, and like I'll presume good intentions of someone else. I don't know whether my intentions will be presumed as good at the moment. So I don't know. I don't have a question in there necessarily. Just kind of observing that there's a few.
Yeah, it's
like,
not
really helpful. Yeah.
entirely the same. I would say conversation, those group guidelines could turn into conversation topics.
Yeah.
You know, how do you tell someone when you're not comfortable with with something they said, or, you know, just have you had that experience before and how do you handle it? Or, yeah, how do you feel when you get unsolicited advice? Could be, I don't know, generating conversation topics down the line. If it seems like that's something that would be helpful. Honestly, I mean, if it's just a quarterly thing and you guys are going and you just want to have a good time and get to know each other better and feel like you're connected in the community, you can just stick with the fun stuff, you know. The structure should serve you and should serve, you know, the people. So if you walk away feeling like everybody had a good time, then you win. Yeah, that's absolutely. And we tell our volunteers when they come to work with, you know, the kids and our families, they're only there, you know, some of our service learners, they're only there for a semester. But there's some pretty strong connections made, and we want people to have those. The more connections you make, the stronger and more supported you feel in your community, the more apt you are to feel like you can take on some stuff, because you're not alone. But the depth of the relationship kind of just depends on over time how that develops. Sometimes our service learners are like, I feel like we just come and have fun. Like, I don't feel like I'm learning anything. I'm like, no, you absolutely just did something there, because you had fun with people that are from a completely different background and had a completely different experience growing up. And you guys did that and you built a relationship. And those are tools that you're going to take with you, hopefully into your professions. And so, yeah, it shouldn't feel like work. It should be fun to get to know each other.
And all that, an example came to mind as you were talking from the last time we were at Crawford, kind of both about having fun and about not judging. And that's where I was talking to someone, and this is sort of like, I don't remember how it came, like the sort of raw material of the conversation. I don't remember how it came up, but he started telling me about trying to earn money. Like his main source of income was dumpster diving. And part of me was quick in my mind to be like, that's weird. But then like, no, that's judgmental, like kind of backing up. And like, really, I just got curious of kind of like, I wanted to treat this as, I'm kind of interested in how this works. So I hope the tone that came across was like, I view, first of all, you as a valid human being. And secondly, what you're doing as valid, but kind of, I would say what you said earlier, Katie, is kind of 1 Corinthians 13 of love believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Like, I'm going to take this person at face value.
Yep.
And then kind of like, oh, and because of that, I wasn't, and this is partly the TC training for myself, I wasn't afraid to then start asking more questions about, well, where do you go? And like, what time of day? And how does this work? Where do you sell it to? Because I just want to know. And,
Yeah.
I hope it came across as an equal footing of like, this is a different experience than mine. And I'm coming across with no judgment, but it's okay for me. Like, I think 10 years ago, I might've backed off and just like not asked any questions, because I don't want to ask the wrong question or say the wrong thing. Whereas this was more like, okay, I think if I'm coming from, I'm not judging him.
Yeah.
Go ahead and continue.
No, that's absolutely, like, if it's in the spirit of curiosity and respect, and, you know, I'm not, the judgment of like, oh my God, what? Like, that's, you know, because if you're looking at it through your middle class lens of upbringing and you've been told that these are the things that work and these are the things that don't work, it can be hard to suspend that judgment. But if you just get curious about it and say, well, something's working here, you know, this person is figuring some things out, and like, yeah, I'm just really curious about it. Like, how's that work? It also kind of helps you to understand poverty and some of the systems, because you can see, you know, how those choices might make sense to someone and why they make sense to them. And, you know, that, okay, with the choices available, and this is what we're doing, okay, like you can start to kind of see that. And it makes you a better advocate when, you know, people are going out and developing new programs and talking about new things. And we'll often get surveyed, or people will come to us like as a think tank to say, do you think this program will work? And it's like, well, if you understand some of these basic things, then you can kind of start to identify what works and what doesn't work. And and having the support of other organizations too, like, we rely on a lot of our volunteers. I hope that you guys will feel comfortable enough to come to us with more questions. This does not have to be a one-off kind of thing. I love that there's a group that wants to explore it. You need that support. I'll tell you a little anecdote, because I do have an ally who thought, oh my gosh, I've learned so much with TC. I'm going to take this into this other thing that I'm doing in volunteering. And she was volunteering with somebody at the library, and became friends with them. But because she didn't have the support to kind of ask and bounce ideas off of other people, the relationship sort of went off the rails a little bit. It became very transactional, and she was like, wait, that's not what my relationship with Katie was like. And I had to say, well, it's because not every person is Katie. Like, not everybody in poverty looks like Katie. And not everybody's going to look like that. And we're not a monolith, like, you do have to have some support for like processing some of this, and working through it, and just kind of figuring out where you're going. So I hope that can be kind of an ongoing thing. That's all. I wanted to get to know you all today, to kind of figure out what you were doing and where you wanted to go with it. And to recommend maybe some resources and things to get you guys going, things that we use. Do you have any more questions before I go to the resource part?
I'm just excited to hear more about these resources.
Okay.
I love resources.
Okay.
I
So
think,
we have,
Sarah, did you have a question? I saw you unmute yourself, but maybe not.
okay, I can't see people, so yeah, call them out for me.
Oh, no, I was just trying to make a comment that I think a lot of these tips that you're giving us, Katie, are super useful just in general, encountering people every day. And also, I'm 33, and I work with Marcus on the Jubilee group, and I'm easily 10 years older than everyone there. And that's a different walk of life, entirely, right? So those tips are, I think, just super helpful in general, outside the context of this conversation. So thank you very much for sharing those.
Hey, hey Katie, I'm Riley. I had a question for you. In these situations, specifically with Crawford, I went to the very first one that we did there. And the one thing I noticed from my perspective as someone who's coming from, the social justice team and wanting to put this on for everybody, how do you differentiate between, we want to be interactive and we want to be social with everyone there, but how do you differentiate between someone who maybe needs more prompting and wants more questions asked to them versus someone who just maybe wants to just be there for, maybe get the food or just have like a nice time? Because I noticed that when I was there last time, I was trying to go up to and interact with a lot of people, and maybe I just wasn't asking the right questions, but the conversations kept having dead stops. So is there any body language that we should be aware of that indicates, maybe this person doesn't necessarily want a conversation at the moment?
I would say, if you're going and you're asking if you can sit, with them, and they're engaging in their own conversation and not really interested in you, then you kind of have your answer, right? Like, the relationship has to be based on both people wanting it. And if you're offering it and you're not feeling like, they're taking you up on it, I wouldn't say that, it's best to try and like do it. I think a lot of people, we have, again, time helps, consistency helps, like them seeing your face repeatedly helps. They might not want to talk to you the first time they see you. And it might take a couple of times of seeing you guys come through to recognize that, like, oh yeah, we know these people, like, cool, they're cool. It might just take a little time. We have captains who come in, and it'll take, we meet weekly, and it could take months to get, some participation and a little bit of opening up, but they're kind of testing us to see, are you going to respect my boundary? Like, you said that this is up to me, and you said that this is like a reciprocal relationship, but is it really? Or do you feel like I owe you something? Or do you feel like I owe you conversation? Like, you're coming here to me, so let's, they just want to make sure that that boundary is legit, which is fair.
That's really helpful, Katie, because as the time went on, we've changed some things so it'll flow better. But there was a lot of people, they didn't sit at the tables. They went and sat on these concrete steps, and it was just obvious they wanted nothing to do with us, but they wanted to see, and it made me feel like, oh man, this isn't working out right. But you're right. I think that consistency and holding up our end is what counts. And it is hard when somebody turns you, they just shut you down, it's
Well,
tough.
and they've probably encountered lots of different.
They've had a terrible time. Those poor people, oh my gosh.
Yeah. But like our interactions with churches and volunteers
Mhm.
run the gamut. So you don't know what the past experiences have been like. They've probably been to churches to ask for help and may have had positive and or negative experiences with that. They've probably had, people volunteering to do meals before, and those people probably just wanted to come and give them their meal and feel good about it and go home. And that's okay too, because you're providing a concrete thing that, people need, and that's appreciated. If, relationship and you want to build a little bit of community there over time, it's just going to take earning some trust and showing respect and letting it happen. I know. So it's funny because I have Thriving Connections for all these years. And then the job that I had right before this was talking to people about Medicaid on behalf of an insurance company. And so was going to places like Shalom and sitting down. And since they didn't know me, I was sort of in this place where you all are at right now of they don't want to talk to me. They want to come up and get my free stuff and go. And that was okay. That's okay. And after I did it for like once a month over the course of the year. And probably by about like 5 or 6 months, people started to recognize, oh, Katie, the anthem lady, is coming in and she's cool. And we were starting to make connections, and they'd start to come up and kind of sit around my table and like have their own conversations, but then like turn around and ask me questions or invite me on their podcast or like whatever. But it just started to be more fun once they figured out that I wasn't there to force anything, and that, it was just a friendly face coming to help out. It just kind of blossomed from there. But it takes a little time. So any other questions before I jump to the reason? I also know it's like late at night and you guys are all volunteering to like be here talking about this. So I want to be respectful of your time. So other topics that you might want to think about or might like to explore with Thriving Connections, things that we talk about or do in the community. So we do presentations on poverty in Monroe County. If you guys are interested in like what the data and the statistics are and all that kind of stuff, we can talk about that. We have put on poverty simulations before for groups. Those can be really helpful. That puts you guys in the role of somebody who is under-resourced, and you take on that role and you get to play out living a month in poverty. We talk about the cliff effect, and that's a financial term that is referencing the effect that happens to people when they start working or start making improvements and start losing benefits. So it's the thing that happens, right, when you're making $13 an hour and your boss is like, you're awesome, I'm going to give you 20 cents more. And then the Medicaid office is like, well, now you don't qualify for Medicaid. So you lose your health insurance, right? And there's all kinds of benefits and they all have different eligibility. And it's very difficult to kind of predict how those things that you depend on, like food and childcare and health insurance, are going to be affected when you make choices. So we talk about the cliff effect and we show how it like plays out for people. Sustainable employment is one that I've been super excited about this year, because that one, again, developed completely by people within our community to talk about issues with work, to talk about mental health with work, to talk about safety, what makes a job safe, what makes it stable, what makes it fair, what is the living wage in Monroe County, and a way to kind of help people and employers understand. We talk about ACEs. We can share with you guys adverse childhood experiences. And within TC, we love to talk about positive childhood experiences. So we want to provide lots of those for our youth to kind of counter out all of the adverse childhood experiences. We can connect you with trauma-informed care, mental health first aid, whatever you guys want to get into. Resources. So findhelp.org. Is anybody familiar with that? Or Helping Bloomington Monroe? If you're not familiar with either of those are going to, that's your secret weapon right there. Findhelp.org. If you are talking to someone and they're like, I don't know what time that food pantry is open, or I don't know where I can go that's like close to here that provides XYZ. This is a live database of social services.
Katie, I think that's also called Aunt Bertha. I'm not
Aunt
positive.
Bertha, yep, that was the name. Aunt Bertha starts where Uncle Sam leaves off.
Nice. I did not
Yeah.
know that. Also, we had someone come from like maybe 2 years or a year and a half ago, someone from 211 come and talk
Yep.
to a small group of us with similar, I think they have the database, but also people to refer to, like to talk to.
Yep. 211, they're making improvements. So 211 is getting better all the time. In part because they're competing with Aunt Bertha. So either of those, if you know how to navigate, you know how to play around on there, you can help somebody out big time. I've done that at any, event or resource fair that I've been at where somebody has asked me a question. Well, no, I don't know the answer, but I know how to find the answer. Or I know how to get you a phone number, or I know how to get you, the hours that Macomb is open. Monroe County Systems of Care is a group that meets monthly that is headed up by Centerstone. There is a Systems of Care in every county, but it's a group of social service and mental health folks, even sometimes schools, sometimes the probation department will be there, but they get together and talk about, share resources, share trainings. Trauma-informed care training, if you guys are interested in that, or Bridges Out of Poverty training. That's what Marcus did when he became an ally, I think. And then Indiana Prevention Insights they also have like a whole menu of free trainings for, motivational interviewing, which is also a form of communication that's really helpful. All sorts of stuff. And then, the routine that we end all of our meetings on is called appreciations. The premise, it's pretty simple. You give someone an appreciation and then you receive an appreciation. Generally, we're sitting like in a little circle. And the only rule behind appreciations is that you can only say thank you when someone appreciates you. It's a rule. And that's because many of us aren't really intentional or in the habit of giving and receiving appreciation. It can be very hard for people, especially if, your self-esteem has taken some hits, which happens when you're in poverty and you're going around asking for help all day. It can feel pretty low. So having an appreciation and realizing that you have things to give to the world and that you are having a positive effect on people is something that we build into our routines and our meetings. Receiving appreciation is also something that we all need to practice. so many of us, you know, if somebody tells us, hey, I appreciate your smile, or I appreciate that you did this thing for me, or I appreciate that you helped me out. The go-to response, at least, you know, in the Midwest, is like, oh, shucks, it was nothing. Or to deflect it, or be like, no, it was really easy. I didn't, you know, oh, it was so-and-so who did all the work. Nope. That's why we make the rule. You can only say thank you. So if appreciations somehow ever are helpful to you all, it's a really, really good way to end a meeting or a dinner or an interaction. Makes everyone leave feeling good about themselves and good about each other, feeling connected, and building the skill of receiving and giving appreciation.
Katie, I may have told you before, but I've stolen new and goods and appreciations for my Jubilee leader meetings.
I've stolen them for like everything I become a part of. So
And the
it's okay.
appreciations, so it's really helpful. I would say kind of like in especially like the leadership context I use it in, because at first the students, the student leaders or young adult leaders hated it and found it awkward, not hated, but it was like, I'm embarrassed, I don't know what to say. And then like at some point they really love it. So, and like miss it if we don't do it. So like, and
and it's an intentional way, again, over time, you know that you can predict that you're going to have that space and that you're going to be doing that. And so you actually start to take note of the things that you appreciate. And you start to kind of, you know, it gets easier to give that appreciation. Learning anything is going to be awkward. But goodness, I mean, the appreciations that we have given each other over the years, you know, some nights it's just light and funny. And it's like, I really love that crazy sweater you're wearing tonight, Katie. And some nights, you know, it's somebody telling me that, you know, the way that you parent your children inspires me, or, you know, that interaction that you had the other day, you can't understand like how much that meant to me. Things that, gosh, I'm really glad that they shared that with me because I needed to know that. Yeah, those intentions, they can feel awkward, just like all of this stuff. But I feel like if it's awkward, then you know that the growth is happening. So that's it. That's all I have for you guys tonight. But I would love to continue the conversation and go as deep into this in whatever direction as you guys would like. I think for you guys just getting started and you're going for your second time this week, hopefully some of these things will be helpful. And you'll have more questions later.
Okay.
I definitely anticipate that being the case. I think this is really great advice for us as we are getting started and really connecting with these groups. And like you said, consistency is key. And what you said about routines and no unsolicited advice, just everything you've said was really helpful. So I really appreciate it, Katie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's give Katie a little round of applause. Yay! Go, Katie.
Thanks.
All right, does anyone have any final questions for Katie? We've only got a couple minutes left, but is there anything pressing that anyone would like to know?
No.
Okay. In that case, I would love to just say a short prayer to close us out this evening, if everyone's all right with that. All right, let's pray. Lord, thank you for bringing Katie with us tonight. What a wonderful conversation. We really appreciate her time and appreciate everyone's time making this happen. We are all really passionate about forming connections with your beloved children, Lord, and we appreciate all of the guidance that Katie has given us and everything that we've learned here tonight. So please help us to use what we have learned this coming Friday as we connect with the people of Crawford and get to know our community. Thank you so much, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
All right, go in peace, y'all. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Katie.
you.
Good to
Thanks,
see you.
Katie.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Katie.
And thanks, Esprit.
You're
And
welcome.
Esprit.
Bye.
And Marcus.
And Marcus, yes, and
Yeah,
Marcus.
on the back row. We can thank everyone. There we go. Like, yeah.
Everyone, thank you. Thanks for coming, y'all. All right, bye.